whispers and rumors that don't get reported. Stories I write that are often distorted. Got my notebook and pen, and I'm ready to listen. Tell me the truth, I'll consider your position. I've seen killers with eyes so cold and dead, and others go to prison because of what someone said, rotting away for the rest of their lives, leaving a hole here on the outside. Things are sad here on Earth, and it's no wonder why, when you consider the sociopaths who remain in charge. It's me who sees the system for all its flaws, and I usually start with the probable cause. My right hand is reading the probable cause. Welcome to The Probable Cause. This is a podcast originating in Allen County, Indiana, and covering the legal system and the courts in northeastern Indiana. I'm your host, Jamie Duffy, a journalist and crime reporter here, and to my left is Michael McAlexander. He is the Allen County Prosecutor, and absolutely fantastic to have with us for all his invaluable insight. Also contributing is my right hand, who wishes to remain anonymous. I think you've gotten to know her through the phone and realize how indispensable she is to this podcast as well. She's coming along in her battle against cancer, and any good wishes you can send along, we would appreciate. Now, today we're going to be talking about bail versus bonds. People use those two words interchangeably, and so we're going to discuss the differences and some of the intricacies of that. But first, as we usually do, we're going to talk about the courts this week. Just want to remind you that it is spring break. So, Mike, what's going on in the courts?
Not a whole lot. A couple of judges are on vacation. A lot of our staff is on vacation. So they are conducting the normal initial hearings after new arrests, doing trial settings and other non-trial type work during this week.
So they're still busy.
Yeah.
I mean, it never slows down. We know that. On to bail versus bonds. I just have some AI and some great stuff from Quora, which I love. In legal terms, bail is a financial guarantee, often money or property, which we do need to cover, provided to the court to ensure a defendant's appearance for trial, while a bond is an agreement often secured by a bail bond company that guarantees the defendant's appearance and can be a type of bail. And we do need to get my right hand on the phone right now. So in legal terms, a bail is a financial guarantee, often money or property, provided to the court to ensure a defendant's appearance for trial, while a bond agreement is often secured by a bail bond company that guarantees the defendant's appearance and can be a type of bail. So far, do we agree?
Yes.
Okay. So in Quora, which again, I do say I love it, in the past, only those who had enough money or property to post as security were lucky enough to secure temporary release pending their trials. Entrepreneurs, and that's the way you pronounce that word, by the way. I hate it when I hear entrepreneur because that rhymes with manure and it's not the right way, okay? Entrepreneurs eventually realized that with enough capital, they could offer the security to the court in a defendant's name after receiving a percentage of the amount as insurance. So that's usually 10 to 20% is what I read.
I think the standard is 10%.
Right. I think it is too, at least in Indiana. There are extra fees involved when using a commercial bond service, which is how the organization profits from this practice. There's also an amendment to the U.S. Constitution that was put in place to prevent excessive bail bonds, although I have heard when I've read news articles that people will call bail excessive, and the judge has to agree. The Eighth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution provides that excessive bail shall not be required. However, the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that the Constitution permits holding a defendant without bail pending a criminal trial, as in murder, and there is no absolute right to bail that exists. So everybody in agreement, more or less, there.
More or less. I think there's some practical considerations that have been imposed. And for example, Indiana has some of this in its constitution. It also has statutory language as well as a rule of criminal procedure that involves release and bond and bail.
So, and that protects the defendant is what you're saying, I think.
Well, I suppose there's a presumption. I mean, in just reading the rule, if an arrestee does not present a substantial risk of flight or danger to self or others, the court should release the arrestee without money bail or surety, subject to such restrictions and conditions as determined by the court, except when murder and treason are both incorporated into that, or the person is on pretrial release not related to the incident that is the basis for the present arrest, or they are on probation, parole, or other community supervision. Which is why when we've had discussions about who's in our jail, and I would say generally we have the right people in the jail, because even if they are in on a comparatively low-level offense, it's usually because they were on probation or parole, or they have pending charges on another case.
Or they might be a flight risk.
Flight risk comes in on some.
Right. Probably not a whole lot, because most of the people in the jail are not wealthy. They are poor, and they probably don't have too many places to flee. But anyway, so bail, here we go. The payment, I thought this was interesting. The defendant or their family typically pays the bail amount directly to the court. That's bail, not bond. If the defendant fails to appear or violates the conditions of a release, the bail money may be forfeited.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
The surety, when they come in, when they pay 10%, or the person pays them 10%, essentially they're buying an insurance policy that gets paid off to the court if the surety can't produce the defendant at a later date.
But if they pay the bail directly to the court, they're not
if
going
you do, that's generally more considered to be a cash bail kind of thing.
Allen County doesn't have cash bail.
Right.
Like Whitley County, Noble County, the smaller counties do, but you can't just go pay directly to the court in Allen County.
Well, why don't we have cash bail?
You'd have to ask the court on that. At one point, I believe we did had the 10% cash bail, and some jurisdictions still do it. That's really up to the judges of the district to make those determinations, similar to if they have a bond schedule as to what the bonds are for different offenses. That is not mandated at the state level. Each county, which I think you're going to talk about later, can set their own amounts and how they want to do that, as long as they are not unreasonable.
Right, and that is very interesting, because I think there's been a whole movement against cash bail.
There's a lot of people talking that way. I have not seen any studies on it.
Bail in general.
Right. I mean,
just cash bail.
The argument, is that are you in jail just because you don't have money? And certainly our bond schedule allows for most misdemeanors to be released on their own recognizance. So a lot of people do get released just on their own promise to come back. But that's also what has been added in the last 10 years, is we do an evidence-based risk assessment tool on everyone who comes through our jail. And that then, each person then, when they go into court, if they're not otherwise released on the own recognizance pursuant to the bond schedule, they get a hearing at their first appearance in court, where the risk assessment tool has been done, and the judge or magistrate takes that information and does a combination of looking at the person's past record, the facts in the probable cause affidavit, and looks at things like residence. How long have you lived here? Are you from this area? Do you have family here? Or are you here from somewhere else with no real ties?
Is that up to the prosecutor's office to do that risk assessment?
Actually, here, the Office of Court Services, the Criminal Division Services, does that.
Oh, they must be busy. So if the defendant fails to appear if there's a bond, AI says, or violates the conditions of release, the bail bond company is responsible for the full bond amount, which may be forfeited. So we're going to get into bounty hunters too. Here is another gem from the Quora. In a money bail system, now this is like lawyers talking and bail bondsmen and people like that. In a money bail system, a defendant posts a sum of money with the court. If the defendant makes all his appearances, the money is returned. If the defendant fails to appear without excuse, the bail is forfeited. However, and this is what he says, this is a big however, the fact is that most courts set bail in an amount which is too high for most people to provide. And we will see that in some of my examples.
I'm not sure I agree with that, but...
Well, go ahead. I mean, disagreement is great on a podcast. So instead, these people pay an insurance company through a bonding agent to post the money for them. That is a bail bond. If the defendant makes all the appearances, the insurance company gets its money back. The defendant does NOT get money back. He paid for the bond, usually 10%. So this guy says they set it too high. He also says bail has been a concept since 13th century England. I think it goes earlier than that myself, as an option for pretrial release. Once implemented in colonial America, everyone who thinks our forefathers were ideologically pure and, creating these laws so that every man was equal. Get a load of this, okay? It was rife with corruption, not by any surety company, because there weren't any. Okay, no bail bondsman in colonial America, apparently, according to this bail bondsman, but by the courts themselves. Oftentimes, the sheriff or constable would agree with the judge on a bail amount, and that amount would go to the sheriff. So the sheriff pocketed the money, who would then have plenty of reason to find something wrong with the defendant in order to keep that money. Later on, we had the Pinkerton Detective Agency. They gave birth to the idea of commercial bail, but it was completely unregulated. Everybody's heard of the Pinkerton boys, right? Mm-hmm. This also gave birth to the American term bounty hunter, which is and should be despised by any professional surety agent today. So I thought that was very interesting, and we could talk about bounty hunters. What do you know about bounty hunters?
Not much. I know the surety is put on that, but this isn't an area that I'm necessarily following. If they don't appear, a warrant is issued and we pick them up. And ultimately, the court would provide notice to them. We're not really involved in that usually, to the surety to say you need to produce them.
So in other words, the surety company could use the sheriff's department here in a warrant situation. I mean, the warrants go through the Allen County Sheriff's Department, right? Mm-hmm. They are the ones that go out and track these guys. So they get maybe a bond, but they haven't appeared, so the warrant is issued, and so they don't have to pay a bounty hunter, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, if they're caught by other means, yeah. Now, again, using a surety, they may get some information about the person and get more information than what the court necessarily has. That's part of it. Is in their best interest to make sure they have good contact information for the person who's out on bail, and they may have other assurances from other family members or other information on them that it would behoove them to cooperate with the surety to find the person who's fled.
Right, because they're out the full amount.
Right. But also realize a lot of the people that don't show up for court are more irresponsible than intentionally fleeing.
I would agree with that.
Which is why so often when you see somebody doesn't appear in court, they get picked up a day later or 2 days later.
And I would like to interject here that we did do a whole podcast on failure to appear, and it can cost you. So, and it's on the website, www.theprobablecause.com. It was a very interesting time for sure.
Well, it will also hurt you later when they use the risk assessment tool. If you failed to appear previously, they're less likely to OR you or reduce your bond if you've got a history of that.
Well, if they have a history of that, I have a feeling like they're sitting over in the Allen County Jail, honestly, in Allen County.
A lot of times, yeah.
We do, if I looked at the jail numbers today, I would say there's probably a lot of people in, pretrial felonies and whatnot that are waiting to go to court. So the number is rather high, but we will be talking about that to the sheriff because Mike is going to take a well-earned vacation down in Florida. We don't know where he's going and we're not going to publicize it, but I'm sure he is looking forward to that today when he leaves. So my right hand, do you want to say anything before I get into county by county and my research here?
I just think overall that in Indiana, at least, bond is so varied from county to county that it's hard to cast a wide net that says bond works this way in Indiana. Because there are some, as we discussed, that allow cash bail. There's a few that do not. I think that it varies so much from county to county that you can't just say Indiana's bond works like this.
Yeah, and I mean, we could make an argument for them to make the bail and the bond kind of more uniform. After I read you this, now my right hand is the one that found this bond schedule online at in.gov, indiana.gov. And you just put in bond schedule. Well, a lot of these have not been updated, although the site says they've been updated in 2019, which would be after we went from felony A, B, C, and D to felony 1 through 6. Am I correct?
Yes, we did that in 2013, 2014.
2014. I seem to think, reading over these, and I have been over these a lot. So, and my right hand is going to give a good example of someone who ended up with a $16,000 bond on 3 misdemeanors in Whitley County.
Well, let me also give a little history on some of this locally. Our most recent bond schedule that has come out was amended after we were one of the, I think, 11 counties in Indiana back in 2016, 2017 that were part of a pretrial release project.
It was a pilot program, right?
It was a pilot program, but it started us using these risk assessment tools that were developed. And so we now have 7-8 years of data that it basically has a scoring sheet. It asks questions about past criminal involvement, but also about work, about residence. And then we use 2 different ones, and they each have their own scoring mechanism. But what we have found over time is the people that score low risk have a very high attendance rate of making all of their court appearances. It's up in the 90+% range.
So these are repeats?
No, these are people, if they're considered low risk,
right,
through the assessment tool, they generally are. You're taking a ton of people now, and they appear for their hearings at 90+%. They also don't reoffend while they're out,
right,
in the 90% range. The people that are medium risk are more in the 80% range of both appearance and not reoffending while they're out. The people that are high risk are down in the high 50s to low 60%. So you can argue whether or not, what should the standard be? Should we want to have 100%? But there is statistically a very valid reason, which I was somewhat skeptical of when we first started this. But I do believe that over the years, these numbers have stayed pretty solid and consistent during that time. And that has resulted on us probably relying more on the risk assessment numbers than what we previously did, which was the bond was set based on the crime you committed. So you had a lower bond on a misdemeanor case, say $750 was the standard for a long time if it was an OR, which meant you could go to a surety and post $75 to get out.
Right, 10%.
A lot of what I'd call more major felonies are like at $10,000. Low-level felonies were $2,500, and there are exceptions on all of this. Some other crimes we have prioritized as being more dangerous. aggravated battery, which sometimes was used as kind of a holding charge after shootings or homicides.
Good idea.
Was 50,000, drug dealing 50,000.
Right, I've got
and they're
that.
still on our bond schedule that way.
Attempted murder. Don't forget that one.
But we have definitely, on the misdemeanors and lower level felonies, opened that up a lot more. Now, you also have to remember that in domestic violence cases, both in state law and local practice, we hold people without bond until they have their first court appearance.
Right. There is something about, Allen County was the first one I was going to do. And I did talk to somebody at the jail yesterday. This is an old one. It's from 2012. And so it doesn't reflect, but you can kind of sort out, like a felony one is $25,000, as far as I could tell, except for in those exceptional ones, which was attempted murder, ag bat, and dealing, right? And it has to be dealing in something major drug, right? Like a Schedule 1 or 2 or
Generally,
something like that.
yeah.
Okay. Whereas if then you go down to maybe a lower felony, it's 10,000, and then a felony 6, because I used to sit there and figure these out at the Journal Gazette, it's 2,500, and you're going to find that you are very reasonable compared to other counties in the felony 6. Misdemeanors, I've always thought they were, a misdemeanor A was 750, which wait till you hear what some of these other ones charge. Let's go to Marion, okay? You ready for this one? All right, so Marion County is not unlike us. A level 1 felony is, it says 50,000 surety. Level 2, same amount. You go down to a level 3 and 4, you're talking 20. Level 6 is 2,000, which is less. However, if you are not from Marion County, if you are not a Marion County resident, if your crime involves a deadly weapon, or you've committed serious bodily injury, 2 or more alleged victims, 2 or more prior felony convictions, 2 or more failures to appear, which is grammatically correct. I like that. Not failures to appears, but failures to appear. 10 or more prior arrests, or you've committed an offense on probation, parole, etc., then they double it. So it goes up to 100,000 on felony 1 and 2. It goes up to 40 grand on 3 and 4. And then if it was a level 6, I guess you'd be paying 4,000. So I thought that was interesting, that it could double. But
well, I mean, most of us with experience say the biggest predictor of future offenses or violations of law are your prior record. So it does make some sense to do that. And remember, the purpose of this is to ensure your appearance at future court hearings,
right,
and to protect both the defendant and the public from dangerous behavior.
So prior record could have been 10 years ago. So
could be, but again, the person who's analyzing this takes some of that into consideration. Right. And what was it for? If you were arrested 10 years ago for robbery and you spent most of the last 10 years in prison, you'd be considered pretty high risk. If, on the other hand, you got arrested for, you were 18 years old and got arrested for public intoxication or
but that would be a misdemeanor,
underage drinking. Right? Yeah. So you're probably not going to give that the same weight as a major felony.
Actually, I'm glad you brought that up because the defendant has 10 or more prior arrests, but not including public intoxication in Marion County. They give you a break on that one. I thought that was funny. So let's go to DeKalb. DeKalb's about like we are. They're talking about 25,000, I think, for a felony 1, 20,000 for a felony 2, 10,000 for a Class B felony 3, other than battery. So 10,000, that's, wait till you hear some of the other ones. Class A misdemeanor is 1,000, whereas we would be 750. So DeKalb, there you go. DeKalb's kind of ordinary. But then let's go to Huntington. I found this one to be interesting, and I did call the jail there just to confirm because I had somebody who has spent time in the Huntington County Jail, in fact, quite a bit of time. And he said, yeah, they'll only take cash bail. And that's what the kid at the jail told me too. They want the money, and only a judge can decide whether you're going through a bondsman or not. So a felony 1 in Huntington County, now just remember, ours is 25 here in Allen. It's $150,000, which means if you pay 10%, that's $15,000. Felony 2 is 90. Felony 3 is 70. Felony 4 is 50, felony 5 is 20. A felony 6, which is 2,500 here in Allen County, is 10,000 there. It's 4 times the amount. And they want cash on the barrelhead.
Now, are they taking 10% of those amounts?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So
the other thing that is permitted under this in the rules also talk about some of that money, if it's a cash posting that way, can be used by the court to pay off any court costs or fines.
Yeah, there is one dates. Yeah, go ahead.
In Whitley County, my loved one was in Whitley County. He's the one that she was talking about that had a $16,000.
Yeah, in fact, I wanted to go to Whitley right now. Go ahead.
I had to pay $1,600 to the court, but then they took out the fines and court costs and sent the rest back.
Right.
So you get the rest of your money back if you do a cash bond.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but what was the initial? It was, my right hand, did you not say it was because of 3 misdemeanors?
Yeah, 3 misdemeanors, and the bond was $16,000, so I had to pay $1,600.
So in other words, there was one for an OWI, you told me, one for an OWI where the back was .15 or above, so that's twice the legal limit. And then the other one was they found a roach in the car. And that's what, Whitley, if you look at their bond schedule, look here, folks, this is like the menu at a diner. It's got literally everything you can commit, although it doesn't have a felony 1 or 2. It does date back to 2011. And on the subject of marijuana in Whitley, they're very specific. If you're dealing in more than 30 grams, that's 8,000, and that's a felony D, which would be a 6. If you are dealing in 10 pounds or more of marijuana, which is a heck of a lot, that's 20 grand. However, if you just possess it, that is 4,000, and that's a misdemeanor A. So
my guess is a lot of that has changed because this was a schedule that was pre-code revision in 2013. So
yeah, but
all of those
the
weights,
arrest she's talking about was not.
Well, but what I'm saying is that the weight limits for a lot of the drugs changed in that code revision. So it used to be, it was a felony to possess marijuana in excess of 28 grams.
Which is an ounce.
Basically, yes. And but that has changed now. Now to get a felony possession of marijuana, it's 10 pounds.
I only know 28 grams is an ounce because I lived in Europe, okay? It's not because I am a marijuana dealer, okay? Okay, so possession of cocaine or narcotic drug there, and you know what? I get the sense that maybe even though there's been revisions, it is still probably 10 grand for possession of cocaine. I could be wrong, you know, that's just possession, all right? If you deal in methamphetamine, it's 10,000, but if you get caught with it, it's also 10,000. To me, that's wild. And by the way, these are found on in.gov. A lot of them probably need to be updated. It would help us out a lot. I think a criminal justice class like out at PFW should take all of these and come up with this fantastic chart. It would take them hours, but it would be a great, you know, graduate program or something like that. So Noble, let's go to Noble. Level 1, level 2 felony is 25,000, which is just like, sort of like us. Mm-hmm. However, a level 6 is 4,500, which is 2,000 more than Allen. So Allen's looking like a better deal every time I read one of these.
Don't put yourself in this position. Don't
That's
commit
right.
the crime first.
Yeah, that's why I'm not saying this, but I do want to stress that most of the people who get arrested and wind up in jail, they aren't wealthy individuals. They're actually, the people who wind up in prison are, according to Prison Policy Initiative, have a greater amount of money, we're making a greater salary than the people who are in jail. We're talking poor people, right? All right, on to Wells. If you are a habitual offender, it is $50,000, okay? Which I thought was pretty stiff for a habitual offender. What do we charge in Allen County if you are a habitual offender? Do you happen to know?
I don't know that we have a separate, that's usually an enhancement charge, that if you're convicted of the offense you're charged with, and you have 2 or more prior felonies that are independent of each other, then you're determined to be a habitual offender. But we usually don't, I think, put a bond on that. It's more of a sentencing enhancement. I mean, you've seen trials where there isn't, that charge is after they're found guilty. We then go to part 2 where we prove the prior convictions. So they're not putting that on as a separate offense for bond purposes.
So, I mean, maybe that changed in Wells County.
I mean, I think you can make a good case. That goes back to the county you mentioned, that if you had 10 prior convictions.
Marion.
Again, I think that's one of the big predictors of whether you're going to commit another crime is what your past record has been. So it makes a certain sense that that's going to be the type of person that is more likely to go out and commit a new crime while out on bond.
Right. And those people will complain that it's very hard to get over that stigma. I've talked to some of them. In Wells, they are a little bit higher on the level 1, which is 30. Level 2 is 20. I mean, otherwise, they're not that much different. Although, then you get down to a level 6. I wonder if they have a lot of level 6s, because it's $5,000. We're $2,500. They are twice as much as we are in Allen County. I mean, I know I'm sitting here in judgment. You're
well,
not,
but if they're accepting, if you look at it on a practical basis, if that's a cash bond and they're posting $500 and they're going to get that back, or most of it after the fines and costs are done, it's not quite as egregious as it sounds, because since we don't have the cash bonds here, they're not getting anything back. They're paying.
So how do you get your court fees and all of that?
We assess them and then collect them during probation, or if they, I mean, there's a tool that if they want to ever get their case expunged later, if successfully completing probation, they need to pay all their fees.
Yeah, and those can be so high. Remember the guy with $7,000 in traffic offenses that I brought up when we did traffic offenses? Adams County is not, Adams County, if it's attempted murder, we're at 50 in Allen. That's 100,000 in Adams, which is not a big county. I don't even know how many people live there, but then I suppose they don't have that many people getting charged with attempted murder down there. We have far more.
No, I mean, most of our surrounding counties, I think, are in the 35,000 range of population, and we're just shy of 400,000.
Right. So this one is old too. It's from 2009. An A felony is 50. That's still twice as much as you charge here, and you did before. And then a B and C felonies are 30. Dealing drugs in Adams County is 30, whereas here it's 50. So let me just go down to see what a D felony, a D felony, which would now be translating into a felony 6, that's 7,500 in Adams County according to this, and that is like 3 times as much as they charge here. And an A misdemeanor is 1,500 rather than 750 in Allen County.
So everywhere you look, it's a bargain to go to jail in Allen County.
Yeah, you know what? You are absolutely right, my right hand. I mean, if you're going to commit something, consider Allen County, you know. Plus, we have all these wonderful sites in downtown Fort Wayne.
You don't get that good of a view out of the jail.
That's another thing we should talk about. Those little arrow slits. When I go around to visit castles in Europe, they have the same thing where the archers would stand and shoot their arrows out. You know, it's this. Go take a look at Allen County Jail right now. It's no wonder they called it inhumane. All right, now I've got 2 high ones, and we were talking about these, and then I have a super high one. So let's talk about Elkhart. Now, Elkhart and Steuben that I'm going to go into, they pull over a lot of people for marijuana. And we know that they're right up there on the Michigan border. And they can just get them coming down. Well, Steuben would be I-69. I'm not sure about Elkhart. I studied the map once, and I don't know that who knows? But anyway, they do make a lot of money off of that. And marijuana is still not legal in Indiana, but it is illegal in Michigan, as many people know, right? Okay, so for a level 1 felony in Elkhart, it's $150,000, which I believe is the same as Huntington. A level 2 felony is $100,000. A level 3 is $75,000. Let's go down to a level 6, which is $3,000. Now, as we talked before this, one of the reasons that the bonds might be high is because it's very easy to flee over the Michigan line.
Well, I think it's also, Steuben County, half of its northern border is Michigan, its eastern border is Ohio. So you have a lot of people going through there. They also get a lot of population increase from non-residents during the summer.
Right.
With all the lakes. That brings a lot of kids. A lot of kids smoke a lot of dope sometimes.
Well, let's not be judgmental here. You know what? I think it's across the board.
And
because you're taking into consideration gummies, too.
Well, they've also got the Indiana Toll Road that has a lot of cross-country traffic on it. So they have probably proportionately a lot more people that are not connected to their county and may very well not show up for future court dates.
Right. So I don't know if it said here this one didn't go into like Whitley County that's like the diner menu. It doesn't have anything about specific crimes. Elkhart, that's Elkhart, and then Steuben is not quite as high. Of course, this is as of July 2014 too, so who knows. But if it's a level 1 felony, it's $100,000. Level 2 is $50,000 on down to level 6 is $3,000, which is $500 more than Allen County. Class A misdemeanor, this is what shocked me. A Class A misdemeanor is $2,500. Here it's $750. I mean, that's quite a jump, right?
Well, again, I think they have probably a lot of tourists and just people that are not residents of their county, and they probably have a higher failure to appear rate.
But do we have lakes in Elkhart County too? I mean, I know Steuben is loaded with them.
Steuben and LaGrange, I think, are the two bigger ones in this area.
So the defense attorney I was talking to, he also said that they charge these high rates because if you don't have the money, and maybe the lake residents have a certain amount of wealth, I would agree with. But the regular average person in these counties doesn't, okay? The per capita income in Whitley County is like $10,000 less than the per capita income of the United States of America. So they'll go after a person's property, and he has experience with this in Huntington and Steuben, where if they say, oh, okay, if you don't have the money for cash bail, they put a lien on their property. And he's had instances where that's happened in Allen, too. Can you speak to that, please?
I don't think we do a ton of that. I think that was more common that people would agree. Essentially, it'd be like a second mortgage on your property, other than you're not paying it off the same way. I think most people, at least in Allen County, are going through a surety, not using property. So I don't think we see that much of it. Another thing I wanted to point out, though, that with all of these schedules, a lot of this was designed for you get arrested, and the first thing you want to know is, how do I get out?
All right.
Well, the bond schedule, it's a schedule. It says you did this level of crime, and it's usually specific to the crime. You can pay this amount and you'll be released. A lot of this is done before they ever see a judge. So what we don't necessarily know here is what the practice in each of those counties is. That do they have some of these that may seem to be a little bit higher, but it ends up being a hold till you see the judge, and then does the judge reduce it to either a release on your own recognizance or a much lower amount.
So I've talked to 3 people, though. I've talked to somebody who spent quite a bit of time in Huntington. And and I believe him when he says that, because what he said checked out with what they told me over the phone. We have my right hand with her example in Whitley County. All right, and then I have the defense attorney who said that they have slapped liens on the property of his defendants in all 3 of those counties, but also Allen. So we know that, and it does remind me, I'm going to go back in history a little bit, in fact, quite far in history now, because in England, there used to be, when the Normans went over and took over everything, there used to be something called the Heriot, Heriot. This is exactly what the liens reminded me of, because if, let's say the breadwinner died, okay, in this case, might be put in jail, what they would do is take the best animal that family had, because they weren't going to get the same work out of these people, right? Out of the serfs or the villeins or whatever you want to call them. It reminds me of that. It's like a further gutting of that individual's income. However, they are committing a crime, so you have to balance that, right? But the liens seem a little harsh to me. And you're saying that maybe they're not doing
they go
it as
through
much.
But again, it's released if they do everything they're supposed to.
Right. So he has had people, he says they'll sell the property. Now we have to come to another county that's not attached to our area, and it's one of my favorites because I love the name of it. It's called Posey County, and it's way down in southwestern Indiana. It's the furthest most southwest southern. It's where New Harmony was created, which was supposed to be utopia. The per capita income is a good $11,000 less than the national per capita income. It has about 25,000 people. It borders, or Wabash River is on one side, the Ohio River. It must be very picturesque because you can just see the rolling hills and everything. It's a big port. Apparently grain comes down Wabash River and down the Ohio. And I mean, I would be willing to go visit it sometime, but I was shocked when I looked it up because now this is 1999 and you can see even the type looks old-fashioned, but a felony A, of course, like a murder, would be set by the judge. We're talking about a county of 25,000 people. However, if it's a port, there's an influx of individuals in a port city. But a felony B, which would translate to a felony 2, is $200,000. $200,000, and it says cash only on this thing.
Hey, 20 grand to the court.
That's right. It even says 20,000 cash only. A felony C involving injury to a person or against a person is 100,000. 10,000. A felony C regular is 50,000. That's 5,000 cash only. Well, heck, we only charge 25,000 here in Allen County for a felony 1. I don't even know. I'm not sure what a felony C is. Then if you go to a felony D, all right, which would be like our felony 6 here, it says 5,000 cash only, which means they have to cough up 500. An A misdemeanor is 1,000. So I just sat there and I said, I couldn't believe this. So I started getting interested in Posey County, and it's just a tiny little county. It's right next to Evansville, that area. And so there is a fair amount of crime, and like you get in all big cities. So anyway, that's my presentation. I don't know how we're doing on time.
45.
Oh, we're at 45. Never mind then. So we have covered bail. Do you want to have the last word, either one of you, before I sign off?
I think we did pretty good on covering it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the major points of it, I'll just go back to reminding people what it's for. It's to ensure your appearance, and it's to protect the community from antisocial bad behavior. And those are the two purposes of bond. But don't forget, a lot of
Bail and
people,
bond.
bail, bond, whatever it is, whatever the terminology is, it is all structured behind this ability to who do we keep in jail and why, pending court outcomes. And we try to do that well, and a lot of people do get released on their own recognizance or have their bonds reduced from whatever the bond schedule is originally, because we do look at the individual case. But I certainly understand each county can be a little different. Each judicial officer makes an independent assessment. So you're not going to get strict uniformity on these things, even in the same county.
Right. So, and that's one thing I'm going to check when I go over to England and France, is just to see what their bail system's like. I did have an anecdote, but I'm not going to use that one because we have kind of run out of time. This is The Probable Cause. It's a podcast. And like I said, please visit www.theprobablecause.com. This one will be posted, I think, fairly shortly. I think we're almost caught up. This is number 8. And we also have a dedicated Facebook page. And next week, I have a special co-host lined up. It will be the Sheriff of Allen County, Troy Hirschberger, because Mike is going to be enjoying himself in Florida. How long are you going to be gone? 2 weeks?
Just through next week.
Okay, next week. And you deserve it. So anyway, here's a sign off from The Probable Cause. Thank you for joining us. Goodbye. This episode is filmed and edited by Frosty Pictures. The Probable Cause is produced by Maumee Media.
Worried when I crossed the Michigan line, a cop from Steuben County waiting on I-69. A headlamp went out while he pulled me over. Charged me with possession after I rolled down the window.
Now that's skunk.
Indiana's a trip when it comes to weed. It's like who doesn't smoke or use gummies? Your grandpa, your brother, your rich friend from school? Hell, throw in the whole courthouse and my attorney too. It's time those assholes change these stupid laws. It ain't worth the paper for a probable cause. Sitting on a bar stool in my usual place, this guy next to me said he was looking for some cocaine. Hell, I just sold him an 8-ball with a little piece off for me. But my buyer was a cop? Should have known he was a creep. So I'm a dealer, right? You gotta be kidding. It's a rich man's drug. I just take it because I'm injured. 8 years in Westville with a monkey in my back. There's more drugs in here than you can shake a shank at. One dirty drug test, man, this system's flawed. Undercover screwed me in my probable cause. Street crimes never did me no favors. I'm hooked on Fetty. I'm a junkie, not a felon. Told that son of a bitch on the way to lockup. I can't seem to shake it. I need help, not mocking. What do you want from someone who's been through the system? Drugs all through the house before mom and dad went to prison. Throw me in jail and give me a fine? Someday I'll be dead and away from your kind. Now I'm at the courthouse in front of a judge. Can't say my public defender cares for me much. Crimes are committed on both sides of the law. God help me now with this probable cause. C shift never gets old. Anything can happen when you're out on patrol. You think I'm just eating donuts, man? Give me a break. Nothing on this job is a piece of cake. Lights and sirens activated. This knucklehead wants to chase. Baby mama at the scene just spit in my face. Wife's worried that someday I won't be pulling up at all. You'll read about my killer in a probable cause. She went through my phone and she seen my text. I told her forget it. It was just my ex. She took a swing and knocked me flat. Man, I went wild to get her back. Judge slapped me with a no contact order. Now she's got the kids and she's staying with her mother. So she started it all and I have to take the fall. You can read my whole story in the probable cause. When I was young, caught a case for dealing and did my time. Yeah, I got a record, but I was doing fine. Running my own business on the southeast side. Yeah, I got a gun. I kept it on hand. Told the cop my reason, thought he'd understand. In this neighborhood, you need some protection. Attorney thought I could get just community corrections, but the judge decided to send me to prison. Can't get ahead no matter how hard I try. Read the probable cause, it'll make you cry.
Whispers and rumors that don't get reported. Stories I write that are often distorted. Got my notebook and pen, and I'm ready to listen. Tell me the truth, I'll consider your position. I've seen killers with eyes so cold and dead, and others go to prison because of what someone said, rotting away for the rest of their lives, leaving a hole here on the outside. Things are sad here on earth, and it's no wonder why, when you consider the sociopaths who remain in charge. It's me who sees the system for all its flaws, and I usually start with the probable cause. My right hand is reading the probable cause.